I'm just going to continue my casual chat about the subject of astral rights, which I was talking about in a blog I posted last night. And overall, I know this subject is not necessarily really easy to convey to people. And so I'm going to talk about some of the experiences that I've had and some of the practical applications of what I've been talking about. A lot of people understand the concept of psychic protection. There's all kinds of videos out there about it. Some of them are really good. Some of them are comprehensive. There's a lot in my playlists on my other channel, and there's all kinds of stuff all over the internet. Everybody's heard of surrounding yourself with white light and that kind of thing, which I don't think is necessarily always a solution, and that a lot of what I'm talking about with all this astral stuff has everything to do with becoming aware of that which is not physical and that which is hidden or occult. These subtle planes are what occultists, both negative and positive, have been working on for a long time. And that's how, everybody wants to know, how did the Illuminati control this reality? Well, I'm telling you how. They're like 3 steps ahead of you before the manifestation hits. They're using entities, they're using symbols, they're using the astral planes heavily. And they have been for a long time. That's what I was talking about in the vlog that I did last year, over a year ago. It was called The Evolution of the Occult Control System. And some people just have more ability and more control on the astral planes naturally. And maybe it's their genetic line, maybe it's the way they were raised as a child, maybe they have an old soul or whatever. I can't tell you exactly why each case is different, but I've noticed some people are very astrally adept without a lot of training. And I know there's many reasons for that. And so like anything with having senses, they are going to be limited. You're not going to be able to always know ahead of time what's going to happen. You're not always going to sense the subtle things going on the astral plane. But oftentimes, I think that we do, more often than not, actually. And that we, becoming aware of these things and trusting your instincts and not getting confused by your own mind and your mind's own creations. Because the mind is creating all the time, and thoughts really are things. I'm sure many of you have heard that said. I really think that thought has more weight than it's been given, and that oftentimes thoughts that we think are just passing and fleeting are actually part of a greater pattern, and that pattern coalesces, and over time thought takes form, and so you're constantly being reinforced by what it has already taken form. You have a construct that will affect the way that you look at reality. And we're all going through this. We're all looking through this subjective lens. And so you have to remember that a lot of what's going on with the astral plane and a lot of what seems like external attack is your own mind and your own emotional body. And so, this stuff can be really difficult. But I'm going to talk about some of the practical things that you can do to clean up your own field, first of all. Now, things like crystals and organite and smudging with sage have been popular for a long time because they do have an effect, and they can, clean up the energy of a space and of your aura. And things like organite and whatnot buffer a lot of the effects that are happening on the subtle bodies by the technology from all these ELFs and EMFs and the Wi-Fi and all this technology. It's really affecting the subtle energy fields of human beings. And what you find are the people who've been sensitive all along are the first ones to claim that they feel sick from things like Wi-Fi. And so if you're more astrally in tune, that kind of stuff will probably irritate you more, or you may notice it more than people whose, third eye is really shut. I think that what is going on with the technical control system and the grid that we live in is it's restrictive on what you would call your body of light. We'd probably have more awareness of the non-local mind if it wasn't being so tampered with already through the energy grid. And so, in my experience, I've met a lot of people. I used to go out into the country in Oregon and things like that, and I would meet people who had set up their entire property with things like organite and hematite, and different ways to harness and change the energy grid field. And a lot of people are very into this for good reason. At one point, Montauk Chia was actually talking about the whole EMF issue and the energy field. And he's a Tai Chi master and has written many books and whatnot, some of which I've read. And he was talking about how the practice that he does with the Tai Chi and the energy work is to build his subtle bodies up so that they're strong enough to resist the effects of the electromagnetic smog. And I think that that is really ideal, because the stronger your own energy field is, the more you're going to be able to brush off and resist these subtle body influences, and you'll have more containment for your personal alchemical process. The problem is with modern people, we've been living in this our whole lives. We've eaten bad foods. We've had all kinds of assaults on our health. It's really hard to create a strong energy body when you're living in this system. You know, it's different if you're growing up in a different country that has less influence and there's more tradition, and you are not bathed in this from birth. The system here in the West, though, it takes a lot for a person to undo a lot of that programming. And that's why I do promote things like orgonite and crystals and whatnot, because I think we need assistance to buffer ourselves. And the average person really does. And that's, if you can buffer yourself, then perhaps you can build up your energy so that you can have more resistance naturally. And I've had situations where the perp is somebody who's very charming, and they're very good at influencing other people's minds, and they do have a lot of astral sway and influence already. And if you're really dealing with a perp who's got serious astral skills, it's not going to be as cut and dry and easy. Basically, when you have a situation where the perp is using thought forms against you, or they've already got, you know, some kind of occult work going on, and they're doing astral operations, and they have the ability, it can be much more difficult to deal with. Dealing with a guy who was definitely into this stuff, and I knew it, but I didn't really think that it applied. I had a situation where I was doing business with him, and my family was doing business with him, and basically he was a family friend, but he was also someone who was under the influence of some kind of, I think he had some kind of Masonic connections. And what you'll find too, especially, is a lot of Masons have some nasty ass shit going on in their aura per their initiatory process. You know, not all Masons are dirty. I've only met a few though who aren't, and overall what I've noticed is that a good person can get into the wrong Masonic lodge, and they're just affected by the aura of that lodge, and they're affected by the entities that are associated with it and the people who are doing their dirty work in there. And yet what you find with the Masons is, I mean, they're master manifestors. Overall, look at how much money and power they have. Obviously, they've been manipulating this shit for a long time, and they know what they're doing. And they understand that the architecture is built on the inner planes. Anyway, this guy who I was dealing with, when I first was dealing with him, I was having nightmares of being choked by him. And I thought at this point, I was like, no, in my mind, he was a nice guy, but yet I'm having dreams of the guy choking me. And this went on for a little while. I was in a situation where he was really affecting my energy field, and I was sort of half conscious of it. It was a time in my life where I was weakened by illness. And he was definitely part of the exacerbation of that. And I really didn't understand until many, many, many months later that he, you know, actually had been trying to mess with me, because he felt like I was a bitch, and he felt like my complaining was in his way of just basically scamming us smoothly. I think he also was nervous because he knew that he was being slightly deceptive. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I will say that when things came to a head, he started to try to do shit to me in order to put a stopper on me and the trouble that I was causing him. He basically, I think he was probably doing some kind of banishing stuff with me or something. But also what I noticed is the dream started up again. And I had a dream about him in which he was standing next to a particular breed of dog. Okay, I didn't know why, but it was a bulldog. And this bulldog next to him was wearing a military grade invisibility cloak in the dream, right? So this is all in the dream. And I'm like, okay, that dog is evil and that is his guide. This dog was his dog. And so this evil red-eyed dog wearing a military grade invisibility cloak that covered his whole entire body, so it was like just a floating head. It was really creepy. And this thing comes at me in the dream, and in the dream I pulled out my astral sword that was just, my thought form sword, and I turned around and I chopped the dog's head off. And then that was the end. And it's interesting because right after that dream where I chopped his dog's head off, everything changed and he started to out himself. He started to leak and he started to make mistakes. And eventually, the people who I was trying to get to see, yeah, this guy's a conniving creep who's trying to rip you off, finally saw through him. His hold over them went away, like almost immediately after I did this. And the other thing that got me about this, because I probably would have forgotten about chopping that dog's head off in that dream, and I would have just, brushed it off. What got me is how a couple weeks later, I found online, and I had never seen this guy's Facebook page before, but I found online his Facebook page, and his picture on the Facebook page was of him with a bulldog. So that was kind of a weird confirmation for me that maybe that bulldog had thought form really was real, and it was a cartoon bulldog in the picture with him online. And I thought that gave me the chills. I was like, oh damn, this guy was sending me some bad juju. So sometimes, like, you'll see like a symbol. The dog was just a symbol for everything that was going on, and it became a really solidified symbol because I felt like this guy was trying to treat us like dogs. And so all sort of came full circle with that, and it was like, we're not your dog. And that guy, I mean, I'll tell you, I had to do a lot of work because he kept throwing crap at me. And again, it's very difficult sometimes to discern your own imagination from what's happening externally. And that's the bitch of all this. And that's why the mind is such a difficult thing. And that's why, even though some of the mainline skeptics have copped to the fact that remote viewing is real, according to our scientific protocols, it's been proven. The problem is there's a lot of nebulous and, unknown factors when you're dealing with these other levels of reality and when you're dealing with that which is not physically measurable. And so, it is confusing, but sometimes you see actual corresponding and results in the physical world. I think that it's rare that, you have to fight back with an astral sword, but something like that is what I'm talking about as far as asserting your astral rights. It's a lot easier to sword play and sword fight with someone on the astral plane than if it's physical. A lot of low-level astral garbage sent your way all the time. There's so much astral pollution, and so many people get on the internet and then find themselves in a state of frenzied anger or whatever. You've all been there. A lot of people have noticed that, like those people are coming at you and they're constantly negative. If you close yourself off to them, they're swimming in their own negativity. They've got nowhere to dump it. And if you have to be in the physical presence of such a person, like if they're a family member and you live with them, or they're a coworker and you're constantly around them in the office, you have to take that extra step to buffer yourself because they're in your face. And a person and their astral garbage and their astral strikes are a hell of a lot more potent if they're able to get to you physically. That's why a lot of this crap on the internet is just like ho-hum, whatever. Don't waste your time on it. And I'm kind of a hypocrite by saying that because I waste my time plenty bitching at people and, fighting back, but there's no point. And eventually, you do have to decide what you have to pick and choose your battles. And we all have to learn this the hard way. I do too. And then there's the factor of the mind parasites in there, which, I think plays up a lot of the astral problems that we have. They are enhancing the negative thought forms. They are here to create strife and feed on it. And if you don't really observe yourself, you're going to be the fodder for these kind of beings. They're going to get you into conflict, and they're going to get you into cogdis with your own self. And so all of this, is happening on these settler planes, and your mind has so much more power than you're giving it, as far as your imagination exists to create, not just in the physical world. You have an entire creation going on in your imagination and in your dream body, in your dream life. And your dream body can operate in tandem and in cooperation with your conscious mind. And, if you look at all the meditators and all these traditions where people are doing the inner plane work, what you're finding is those people the goal is to become conscious of what other human beings are not conscious of. And then either help to heal the world through that awareness, or take advantage of everybody and create a lot of puppets. You see the bigger picture here. And so there's responsibility that comes with the awareness, and abusing it is a bad idea. A lot of people notice that it's common to put emotion before logic. You're going to find that a lot of what's going on with this frequency grid is about triggering your emotions with no logical reason to go behind it. And so you end up in a state of cognitive dissonance. You end up in a state where you have anxiety and you can't really pin it down. It can create thought forms in you that are very toxic and that make you go about life seeing things through the lens of a victim who's looking for everything to be perpetrating against them. This is why I think that so much abuse nowadays is done by proxy. It's done through the television. It's done through the media. It's done through the movies and such. A lot of what's happening is astral abuse, and the people are physically seemingly fine, although this astral abuse can affect your health and can cause you all kinds of health problems. But the people are not being overtly physically abused so much as they're being abused at the level of the emotion and the mind and through the frequencies and the toxic thought forms. And Hollywood is dishing it up hardcore. And they know what they're doing. They really do. And so you have the right to say no to all of these thought forms and constructs. You have the right to be protected. I understand people, religious people, like people who immediately call in Jesus. Hey, great, call in that thought form Jesus, but be careful, because there's a hollow thought form out there. His name is Jesus, and all the churches have been feeding him. And it's a big parasitic thought form, and there's nothing Christly about it. I think most people are praying to that thought form. I think most people don't have the heart for invoking the real Christ current. If you're going to bring in Christ Jesus, you better have the capacity and the love in you to be able to bring that through into reality. Again, most of the time, just buffering your aura and whatever thought forms or prayers or whatever you want to do, whatever ritual work you want to do to create more containment for yourself is ideal. And so, anyway, I've rambled on long enough about this, but I hope some of that made some more sense and opened up more about the practical applications of defending yourself psychically.